The saying always goes, good things come to those who wait. Well, it's been 9 years since the final entry in the Batman Arkham franchise. A personal top 3 trilogy in video games, period. A distinct Arkham setting, universe and characterization. 9 years later, Rocksteady have released Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, set in that very same cherished and deep universe now known as the Arkhamverse, but different in every way. No longer a straightforward single-player action-adventure game that focuses on the identity and feeling of being the Bat, but instead, the bad guys. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, a cooperative live service game that can be played either solo or in a party, acting as a third-person looter shooter. So, did it match the high expectations of the Arkham trilogy that established superhero games in the AAA space? Or is this how it happened? Is this how the Batman died? One thing why I love video games, why I'm so passionate about them, is what one person might not vibe with, the person right next to them, they might love. These are my thoughts on Suicide Squad. The Arkhamverse was the one that really brought me into gaming in the biggest way. So naturally, this one meant a lot to me. There's so much to break down, so just know there'll be no major story beats here. I'll save my spoiler thoughts for another video. But there will be endgame gameplay to showcase a point or two. Anyway, let's dive in. On the whole, I really like this game. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Did I love every second of the story? No. There's a few things that I don't like or some I really don't like. But for me, video games are about the essence of having fun and leaving an impact. They're the two questions I always ask myself when I'm thinking about a video game. Did I have fun? And did it leave an impact on me? The first question is an easy yes. The second one, that's what I'm still thinking about. I said at the top of the video, the Arkhamverse is so distinct in its setting and characterization, it's got that Rocksteady flair. This game has an abundance of that too. There's so much heart and passion put into every major character here, between the costume designs, the voice work, the world building to showcase how loved these characters are. For years, playing the Batman games, you kind of just had to, imagine who this Superman and Wonder Woman would be in this world. Playing Suicide Squad, they're every bit as heroic and larger than life as you imagine them to be, if not more. Like Wonder Woman. For me, this is the best Wonder Woman I've seen outside the comics. Maybe just on par with the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited series. Inspiring, unwilling to give up, brutal. This game does such a brilliant job of making you see how these heroes are so worshipped, from the invasion dialogue you can pick up around the city, to the literal monuments of these characters standing tall, to the statue of the Hall of Justice, all the way to the street art and graffiti. Those opening moments, just seeing the Justice League in the Hall of Justice, it's that vintage Rocksteady world building that I always speak about. Within 5 minutes of Arkham Asylum, you know this Batman, you know all about him, his history and his level and what he's been doing. It's the same for the Justice League. You spend 5 minutes in the Hall of Justice, and it does a remarkable job at establishing how long they've been together, ideas of kind of what they face and the overall chemistry of the team. But this game is all about killing them. That's what I think is pretty neat as a concept. I know we're all tired of evil Superman, but the depictions of the Bat, Flash and Green Lantern being under Brainiac's control is a really fun concept that Rocksteady do play around with quite well in this game. Look, I'm not going to skate around it. I've seen the comments about a certain section of the game being a disgrace to Arkham and to Kevin Conroy. Listen, I'm not going to get into the moment, but let me tell you, Kevin had a blast doing this, like you can tell in his performance. The evil depiction of Batman is incredible. I'm sure by now you've seen or heard about the Batman experience in the museum, of him stalking you, where you were once the predator and now you're the prey. Not just that, but you'll be fighting Brainiac's forces in the city, and he'll just be on a rooftop nearby watching you, like genuine chills. But Kevin's performance itself, it was brilliant. Hearing him converse with Brainiac, try to intimidate you, you almost see that like militaristic side of Batman, you see why he's the brains of the League. I really loved every depiction of the League here. If I had one gripe, it would be we just don't get enough time with Superman as a whole in this game, especially since this is in Metropolis. Metropolis itself though, is fantastic, but I do think it's lifeless. It's got so much personality in its signature buildings and landmarks, the statues, LexCorp, Wayne Bank, recognisable DC landmarks, loads of Easter eggs for fans to spot. But going from point to point, it suffers in that all you see and encounter is just random patrols, loot-based enemies, or rooftop placements. Of course, you see Brainiac's massive ship in the distance, and it feels like it's around you, but you do never lose that illusion that it is set dressing. That is a problem. There's no sugarcoating it, as some of a lot of hours in Destiny 2, they captured recently one of the coolest places in a place called Neomuna. It was this cyberpunk looking world, but it was empty, and all that potential vanished. I understand the rationale of an invasion and limited civilians being left, but I wanted more here. Even if it was like little faction camps. A good example would be the Division, where just getting from point to point, you'd encounter allies in need of help fighting the other factions. It helps the world feel more populated even in an empty one. Stranded Argus agents would be brilliant to help out if you just hear them, or civilians screaming for help. Not just actual events in the world that you have to do as part of missions. An optional thing you could ignore or participate in. Metropolis in a graphical sense is magnificent. The day and night cycle, the changing weather effects, the character models, the textures, it's fantastic. The facial animation for me is like a top 3 in the industry. The way the faces emote is incredible. You get every little feature. A smile is not just a smile. Harley, for example, it can be an iconic smirk or a genuine ray of excitement. It's very subtle. It's wonderfully done by the Rocksteady team, and it really helps sell that characterization alongside these excellent performances in the game. So yeah, some of the best character models and animations I've personally seen in games. I'd put them alongside Alan Wake 2 and Cyberpunk, I really would. But this is a video game. I've spoke so much about the world and the characters and the graphics. How does it actually play? See, I think it would have been really easy to just be a cover shooter. Make it like Outriders, few more traversal options, akin to Anthem maybe. I really appreciate Rocksteady's attempt to try and put their own spin on a third-person looter shooter. How do you take one of the best combat sandboxes in video games and then translate that to a looter shooter? You make your own shooting version of the free flow combat. Is it as good as Arkham free flow combat? No. But I'm having so much fun with it. I've heard this sentiment that the combat is samey, repetitive and bland. I personally disagree. I really love the whole free flow combat nature of the combat. It's not just having the best weapons, it's synergizing that with your combo counter. So as you level up, you unlock this talent tree, right? And that allows you to spec into the playstyle you really want. So Deadshot can really spec into crit hits, for example. As I spin my counter up to the maximum of 50, when I hit level 50, the damage that I do off one crit hit is then insane. But once you get the flow of it, it feels really great the way traversal ties into it all. I'll rocket over to a place, unleash my traversal attack, slide, replenish my traversal, rocket into the sky, hover, bang, crit shot, take them all out, slide away. And it just flows really well, especially when you then add counter shots into the mix. I do agree that there is still that little bit of overstimulation at times with too much going on screen. I also see the complaint about combat being samey. But I think it comes down to the fact that none of this specking, this combo potential and synergy, it really matters till the end game. And I've seen the sentiment that the game doesn't do a great job of cool loot throughout your playthrough, or synergizing throughout the base game, but I don't ever remember in Division 2, Destiny 2, Avengers, needing to really double down into a playstyle to beat the main campaign. It's always a really tough situation to ask of any developer wanting to make a main narrative available to all, whilst making a loot system that is deep and complex enough to warrant ongoing support. Again, you could level the same complaint that the 4 character kits are all the same apart from traversal. Especially during the main campaign, and I'd find it hard to argue against you, because there's not much at stake challenge wise aside from a few of the boss fights. But then, if in the endgame I played with Harley, the same way I play with Deadshot, I'd get wrecked. If I was constantly in close range as Deadshot, I'd be done in no time. It's a tricky balance to get right to make that talent tree feel impactful during that initial playthrough. I never spent a talent point on something and regretted it, but then during the end game, I swapped things out to really synergize that build. Speaking of build, loot. My thing, I guess, my toxic trait, I love looter shooters. So how's the loot in this game? You know what? It's deeper than I thought it would be. But with that said, I don't know about the longevity of the endgame grind. So, there's 7 loot rarities: common, uncommon, rare, epic, legendary, notorious, and infamous weapons. Everything from common to legendary has manufacturers, so for example, LexCorp, GCPD, it kind of changes the feel and use cases of them guns. All of those weapons can be upgraded, re-rolled, given stats, new perks, etc. Infamous and Notorious have DC villain theming. So for example, I'll call it Season 0, but right now, the Infamous set is all focused around Bane. Notorious weaponry can be Lex, Black Mask, and there's loads. And they all provide different villain-based perks. So for example, with Black Mask, if you hit 3 different targets in a certain space of time, you create this fiery explosion effect that when you start damaging them again, you damage the area around them, and you create these little explosions. What can also happen is creating villain synergies. So say for example, I equipped I think a Two-Face mod with a Lex grenade, and it created this unique synergy to grant a different type of buff. The stats on the Notorious weapons can be re-rolled. I'm unsure on the Infamous ones yet. Infamous weapons are only granted in the endgame activities. More on that later. I really like the whole idea of the Infamous villain sets because it brings in that wider Arkham universe that we've all grown to love so much. I guess that brings me to it then. The Arkhamverse, the main narrative. So, first of all, in terms of production value, Rocksteady are S tier. The cutscenes, art direction, and just authentic feel is all wonderfully captured here. Everyone plays the part too. Every squad member has something to offer, the dynamic works really well. Deborah Wilson as Amanda Waller is absolutely exceptional. All that facial tech I spoke about alongside her performance, she is unhinged and menacing. Like, forget the Suicide Squad, you as the player, you don't want to mess with her. You almost feel the world's desperation through her. Like, this feels like Last Chance Saloon to stop the League and Brainiac. I've spoke about the League and their depictions being fantastic, but what I haven't mentioned is the actual encounters with them, the boss fights. Look, we all laughed when IGN moaned about not being able to hit the Flash when he moved around as the fastest man alive, right? I didn't have that same issue. I think the boss encounters were all well done. Like, franchise highlights I'm talking for some of them. The encounters with Lantern and Batman are like genuine Arkham franchise highlights for me. Again, no spoilers, but they were the real highs. Each one did feel different in their encounter. Different threats, different takedowns. It's hard to get into without spoilers, but the ending of each fight, it just felt off. That could be intentional, but I won't dive deeper into it here. The game does struggle in its opening half though, I would say that. It starts so strong, but then there's this constant barrage of new tutorials in the first half, whether that be system or gear related, or what you're doing in the moment to moment gameplay. It does make for a thrilling last half of the game, but the issue is, when you're not doing the boss encounters, the game doesn't do the best of jobs making you feel like you're doing something different. The different activities never truly feel massively different, and that's the trick in these kind of games. In Destiny, you're almost always doing the same things over and over, but the game tricks you into making you feel like you're doing something different. It really struggles here. Outside of the main boss encounters, I feel between the escorts feeling long and drawn out, or taking out the incubators, it just feels the same. Despite having such a wide array of objectives to do, 99% of the time, because you're just out in Metropolis, it lacks that feeling of variety. Now, with all that said, this is where mileage is going to vary, because I like the moment-to-moment gameplay so much, it didn't have the harshest of effects on me personally. But to some others, it's just going to feel so samey. One thing I didn't particularly love was the end screen missions. You get this emotional major narrative beat, and then you go into a flying loot box and it didn't work, it didn't fit the whole tone. Not to mention that if you're playing through this co-op, it's going to feel a really long and drawn out process while everyone gets the loot and then equips it. I thought overall it was a strong narrative though. There was a few decisions that I didn't really like that you won't struggle to find online though. It is a strong 10 to 12 hour campaign, though I'm going to be honest, it's accompanied by really frustrating side missions in the support squad missions. These are combat encounters with modifiers. So, for example, you might only be able to do damage with critical hits, or shield harvesting, whilst you have to then rescue a civilian by shrinking them into a ball. Doing this would like get you longer time in weaponized vehicles or get you an extra contract to do out in the open world. It didn't work for me. Some of the modifiers are just flat out annoying. Some of them, like, I did actually get in the flow with and have an okay time with. The support squad themselves, they're great. And the idea of having these kind of missions to help stem the barrage of new unlocks allows you to almost get towards the end game and that loop on your own terms. Of course, Riddler's back, trophies, riddles, and then time trials that allow you to get cosmetics. I saw it and I got PTSD when he was first announced in the game. He's actually a very welcome addition here, and I enjoy doing the riddles all over again. Speaking of the end game then, of course, without spoilers, you go on to do these Elseworld missions. Each mission type grants a different type of infamous gear. So one will be weapons, one will be charms, one will be grenades. On these different Elseworlds, you'll be under a timed objective. Now, the endgame loop is to go up the mastery rank, starting at 1 and it goes up to past 60, I believe. It looks like every 30 ranks, you get access to a new kind of infamous locker, new weapons to be obtained and gear to be obtained. I'm only at mastery 8 of us right now. At mastery 10, you then gain access to something called the Killing Joke, which is a survival based mode based on getting kills to keep a shield up. So there's 4 different endgame Elseworlds activities on launch. This system reminds me a lot of Outriders and its world tiers. Do I like it? Does it have longevity? Right now, I'm unsure because only time can tell. I know I'll be ascending up all the ranks to give it a shot, and with Season 1 launching next month, it means we've got a steady cadence of content to look forward to in endgame activities. There's also the Raising Hell objectives. So these are objectives that you complete in the open world, like taking out a rooftop establishment or a certain amount of crit kills. After you do 5 of these, something called a Hell Squad will appear. You kill that squad, you get a reward. Then you go on to level 2. Do the objectives, kill a squad, rinse, repeat. As you progress, you go up a level all the way up to 5, it looks like. Getting better rewards each time until you reach a maximum, where you can do the biggest challenge yet. After you then kill that squad, you can repeat that same max squad over and over. Right now, I didn't find it too worthwhile, but I was only playing at the hardest campaign difficulty. You can increase your just normal difficulty rank. So the base game has 3 difficulty options, but after netting a certain amount of XP in the end game, you unlock the first of 5 extra world tiers, netting new rewards, new notorious weapons, banners, and other stuff. This also acts as a new game plus for you to go back, repeat any missions that you like, but also scoring sweet new gear in that process. So, as an endgame, it's hard to judge right now. It's the same as any live service, but I don't think it's empty. I think it is missing a raid or something of that nature. Though we're getting quote unquote strongholds in Season 1. You've got your leaderboards, which act as a really fun feature for friends, though I'm not sure how big and how much that's really going to tie into the endgame for a lot of people. This is a live service game, so it's always tough to judge so early on as an endgame, but as a feature complete package, this game is full to the brim with quality of life components. Day 1, you got crossplay, cross progression, leaderboards, clans, social squad feature of bringing in friends, so for example I could bring someone else's Harley into my squad with their loot, their loadout, and in return, they'll get some rewards for it. There's no half-baked features here. It's impressive from Rocksteady, and it should be the norm, but a lot of the time we don't see this. It's often under-delivered now, promise for later. Alright then, let's bring the bat home with this one. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, I had, and I'm having, a terrific time with this one. I always wanted this ever-evolving DC sandbox world and universe. Sure, I'd have loved it to be a Justice League game or a Superman game. That's not what this is though, and it shouldn't be judged that way either. You can't judge a product being something else from the thing that you wanted it to be. I think Rocksteady poured a whole lot of soul, love and passion for not just the Suicide Squad, but DC as a whole for this one. They took big swings where some connected and some missed. You don't have to make the game your personality if you love it, nor do you need to pretend it's the worst thing to ever exist on planet Earth if you don't. I'm going to go right back to what I said at the start. Did I have fun and did it leave an impact? My 18 hours with Suicide Squad so far were filled with engaging and smooth combat, visuals that brought Metropolis to life in a way I haven't seen before. It made me laugh, it made me sad. Rocksteady's Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is not a perfect video game, and it's not going to be for everyone. But boy oh boy, is it for me.
Waller out.
So, that's my review of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I'm bracing myself, but let me know in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on Suicide Squad? Please keep it spoiler free. If you're looking to stay up to date on the game now it's here, I've got more things in the works including my spoiler thoughts, endgame breakdowns and so much more. So if you're into that, you're going to want to hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, leaving a like really helps me out as a smaller creator. Have a terrific day, and I'll catch you in the next one.